Kroenke's about the only person who managed to make his image worse by owning a soccer team. It's impressive. Like these oil sheiks and like Russian oligarchs buy a soccer team, drop a bunch of money on the team, and everyone's like defending their human rights violations and shit.
Yeah, yeah.
Meanwhile, Kroenke just like refuses to drop money on the team, and everyone pretends he's responsible for human rights violations and shit.
Yo, that is so on point.
Welcome back to Cannons and Lions, everyone. And this week, Chelsea hammer the hammers as Arsenal gets burned by Bernd again. But this time, the cure for Arsenal's spotty play might be Spotify. That's right, we've got your League Roundup, Champions League previews, and rash takeover speculation on tap today. As always, I'm here with the Greek god of goonery himself. George, how's it going?
Hello, hello. I mean, look, man, as soon as you come in with some news and a rumor that the owner of Spotify is teaming up with the Invincibles to buy your club, it's like the same guy that wrote that Santi Cazorla fan fiction wrote this one too, and it is getting our Gunners all hot and bothered right now. Let me tell you that.
Yeah, no, I think every Arsenal fan around the world getting news that Bergkamp, Vieira, Henry might be teaming up with someone to oust the Kroenkes just went, he's okay, no?
He's okay, no? My friend, he's okay, no?
Yeah, so I mean, we'll get to that in a second, but I think this week, let's start off actually with the only sort of game that really affected the standings in a meaningful way in the Premier League this week, which is Chelsea 1, West Ham 0. This game was a fairly dominant start for Chelsea, who pretty much the entire first half were in control and finally made the breakthrough through Timo Werner with a clean side foot finish into basically an open net after he was found with a nice little cross. And this one, I think it's fair to say it should have been more from Chelsea. I think West Ham is a little lucky to escape it being 1-0 only. But that being said, there are a few Chelsea Fernando Torres curse of the nine vibes with Werner, where even when he scores the decisive goal to win the game, I think a lot of people's takeaway from this one is that he maybe should have had one, maybe even two more.
Mm-hmm.
The most notable chance coming when he got to a rebound off a shot and basically sort of just had to flick it into the far side of the net and missed. He also had a few chances where he was put in sort of 1v1 and elected for a shot when maybe he should have passed, or sort of just fed a feeble shot right at the goalkeeper, sort of. But at the end of the day, I don't think you really can criticize someone too much when they do score the only goal for your team, the decisive goal for your team,
Mm-hmm.
and one that takes you above West Ham by 3 points and solidly in contention for the top four. Chelsea now sitting in fourth place with a 3-point gap between them and West Ham, 4 points between them and Liverpool.
Yeah. Honestly, I think it was a huge relief for Werner to at least get that one off his back. Although he did miss a bunch of chances in this game, it's still a good sign for you guys that it seems the gears are slowly starting to get going on Timo Werner. At least you would hope so. And I mean, yeah, it unfortunately there has been that history of number nine's not really working out at Chelsea, with the exception of probably Diego Costa. I think that you guys have had a lot of tough luck with strikers over the years. Falcao, Torres, Shevchenko. It's been a bit spotty. So I think, and look, Werner was a very good goal scorer, a very good player in the Bundesliga. It's not that he's a bad player. It's just, sometimes it just takes some guys to get going a lot. It's a lot harder to get going in the Premier League than it is in other leagues.
Yeah, and I mean, I've sort of learned it's tough to write someone off after their first season in the Premier League for any reason, really, I think at all. I think as fans, we often underrate how difficult it can be to completely move to somewhere where you maybe, I mean, in the case of German players, their English usually is better than other players, but maybe
Mhm.
sometimes can't even speak the language, have no friends, nothing like that. It's a difficult situation to just come into and have a flying start for all people, I'll say. So I'm not saying that sort of Werner should be given up on, but as a Chelsea fan, it is sort of semi-traumatizing how many strikers we have brought in over the years. And really, the only one who ever, I think, can be called an unqualified success since Didier Drogba's Diego Costa. And
Mhm.
even that had its ups and downs. But
Mhm.
I think any
Lots of
Chelsea fan,
reds.
well, there you go. Actually, do you know he never got a red card?
What? For Chelsea?
He was suspended after games on 3 separate occasions,
Uh-huh.
but
But
he
he
never
never
got a
saw
red
red.
card. He induced red cards like 5 separate times or something like that.
Oh yeah.
But he was the master of the dark arts. He could only ever be caught by the cameras, never by the ref.
Oh my God. I did not know that.
So yeah, in any event, there is a little bit of trauma associated with watching strikers just miss this many chances, and especially going back to Torres. There was that one game where he scored against Man U, and everyone thought Torres is back, and then he immediately missed an open net with no one there to just
Yeah.
completely shatter his confidence once again. So there was a little bit of that vibe going on with Werner to some extent, which is again unfair to him, but you know,
There's precedent is what you're pointing out.
yeah,
Yeah.
old habits die hard, I guess. Um, a couple notable things from this game, I guess, from a tactical perspective as a Chelsea fan. Um, so Tuchel started as Piliqueta as the right wing back and played 3 more traditional center backs than this one and used Chilwell as the left back. Chilwell had an incredible game. He was the one who put in the nice little cross for Timo Werner on his goal. Mason Mount also had a really good game in the 10 role, but in this one, this is sort of the first time we've seen Azpilicueta used outside of the center back role in the back 3 system. So I wonder if maybe that might be in preparation for playing a more defensive setup against Real Madrid.
Mm.
That's sort of my first thought. The second is I wonder if he was particularly worried about some kind of aerial threat on West Ham, but I don't know what that would be, which is because they played Jared Bowen and Jesse Lingard as their 2 most attacking players.
Mm.
So it leads me to believe that probably this is some kind of rehearsal for what we might see at Real Madrid.
Mhm. So I think that that is probably what is going to end up happening. That it was a dress rehearsal for this, and he's going to want to have a bit more defensive stoutness against Real Madrid. But I also think that is because sometimes Suchek attacks far post or is in like the mix in the middle.
That's a good
So
point. That's a good point.
mm,
Yeah, that's not a bad point at all. I mean, the only other thing I have to say about this game is that it did get a little bit scarier later on in the game.
mm-hmm,
Um, the last sort of 20 minutes or so were not nearly as dominant and controlled from a Chelsea perspective. Um, um, will you live with that? Perhaps, but there was a controversial red card shown to Balbuena
yep, I was going
for
to ask
sort
you
of
about that.
putting his studs on Chilwell in a follow through of a clearance is, I guess, the best way to describe it.
Mm-hmm,
Um, so you'd sort of hope that after that red card, Chelsea, I mean, they did regain control a little bit after that, but in the period building up to it, it wasn't as comfortable. Um, so, I mean, is there a bit of concern there from a Chelsea perspective? I would say perhaps, but I personally wouldn't put too much stock into it. Um, were you going to ask about what I thought on whether that should have been a red card or
I
not?
was going to ask you about that. I was going to ask you about that. So what did you think? Do you think it was a deserved red card?
I don't know is my honest answer, but I will say this. I disagree with whatever the broadcast. I was watching on DAZN,
Mm-hmm.
and whatever their broadcast was, I disagree with their analysis. Um,
Yeah, they were
they
pretty adamant that it was a red card.
not
Or no, sorry. Oh,
not a
I
red
must.
card.
Okay,
It,
yes.
I don't know if we were watching different broadcasts. The one I was watching, they suggested that it was never a red card because that wasn't a tackle. It was a follow through, and that just happens sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that is just not the rule. That's just
Yeah.
not the rule in soccer. If you go for a clearance and get the ball, but use what is deemed an excessive amount of force or an out of control movement to do so, and you end up making contact like that on someone, it's eligible for a red card.
Yeah.
Um, the
So
question is, how far out of control was that? And that's why I find it tough to call. I do think there's an issue of using VAR at hyper slow speed, for example, as a way of
mm-hmm.
trying to isolate whether someone was in control or not. I think it makes things look worse than they are, so I don't know what I think of it. But having seen it, I can see that it was a fairly reckless clearance to make and an out of control clearance. So I understand that there's an argument for it to be a red card. I'm not sure what I think about it, to be perfectly honest.
Okay, so I was watching a different stream in that case. I must have been, and I saw the last little bit of this, and I gotta say that I, I can't help but feel that it's harsh giving a red for that. Um, just the play by its nature and the way that he was scrambling to get it was reckless. It was like a 50-50. It would have been reckless for either player, no matter who would have like kind of gotten the ball, you know. Chilwell pulled out a little bit and he managed to get to it. His momentum's taking him forward. I wouldn't necessarily call that reckless by Balbuena. And
I think the
uh,
issue with it is that
it's
he
it's like a
flails his
dark
leg
yellow to
out.
me. It's a dark yellow to me.
Yeah, I don't necessarily disagree with that. I just think what makes it so reckless in my mind is that in making the clearance, he flares his leg out wildly
Mm-hmm.
with his ending by kicking the ball out of the air, which is understandable. That's what he was trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
But if he had made an attempt to point his studs down and to show the ref he was trying to keep his legs straight,
Mm-hmm.
on the replay, I think the ref would have given a yellow. The issue is that his foot comes basically perpendicular to the ground, so that
Mm-hmm.
after he makes the clearance, he leaves his studs wide up and then brings his foot back down to the ground in like a raking motion, which is natural in a sense once you're already out of control.
Yeah, I was gonna say I just don't think he had the time to be able to judge that or the space to be able to judge that. And look, as soon as you slow down these incidents, they
They look worse than
they
they
look
are.
they look a lot worse.
Right. So I agree with that, and that's why I'm not going to defend the ref's decision. In that, I don't like that decision was made at the end of a slowed down replay that largely will blow up how bad it looks.
Mhm,
But I think when you say I don't think he had time to judge that's all true. But I think the way as I understand them, the rules of the game work is that if you're going to make a what I'll call a reckless clearance, which is one where in order to make the clearance, you have to get a little bit reckless with your body and you have to sort of lose a little bit of control.
yeah.
The risk you take in making that clearance is that
Mhm.
even if you get the clearance, if you end up making dangerous contact, you'll be sent off. And
So I I agree with you on that. That like I to be honest, I can't argue too much that it's not a red card. It just feels kind of harsh. You know what I'm
it,
saying?
what it comes down to is just a matter of interpretation that is ultimately in the eye of the beholder of how
Mm.
much did he have to go out of control to make that clearance and how out of control was he in reality. If
So
you believe that he in order to make that clearance, he as a defender threw himself in recklessly and ended up making a reckless contact, you'll give a red. If you think it was more in the realm of normal clearances and that this is just an incidental contact as a result,
mhm.
then you wouldn't give anything, to be perfectly honest. So
Yeah. Well, look, there's a very similar situation that was very similar situation that I believe it was deemed to be either just a yellow or it may not have even been given as a yellow. I can't remember. Was Trent Alexander-Arnold on Bukayo Saka, where Saka clears the ball and Trent basically has his studs planted like in between his knee and the bottom of his calf. And he was not sent off even after a VAR review for that. And that was like a much more egregious, similar sort of movement. Now, Trent was the tackler in that situation, which in my mind makes it a lot worse. But I mean, the kind of contact that there was very similar.
But I think what you actually are either directly or indirectly maybe even pointing to is I think that the referee in this case might have actually been between a rock and a hard place as far as the rules are concerned. Now that I think about it, as we're talking about it, in that when you've got Trent, who's a tackler, there's a rule for showing a yellow card for a dangerous challenge that was not so dangerous, or for a challenge that was out of control but was not so reckless that it's a red card. That's provided for in the rules. The problem with this being a clearance by Balbuena is that I think you basically are put in a tough place where you either have to decide that was a clearance or it was a reckless clearance. And once you make your choice, you either have to give nothing or a red card. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, you know, I do see
I
what
don't
you mean.
think there's a rule where a ref is allowed to give a yellow card for a clearance that is completed but is also dangerous. Because you have to adjudge, is it a legal clearance or is it not? Because if it is and the person gets injured, that's just not a foul ever.
So I'm gonna go out on a limb here and say nothing resembling that level of analysis was taking place in the ref's earphone during this game. Like I don't think you have Peter Walton. I don't think you have Peter Walton saying that in like any of the studios. I don't think you have any of those referee assistant guys like that. What you're saying is extremely fair, right? I just don't have enough faith in the Premier League reffing system to think that that's the kind of conversation that they're having in the earpiece.
So, look, my heart of hearts tells me you're right about this one.
Yeah.
But given that I have no knowledge of that, let me just stick to saying this. My biggest issue is the way this stuff is discussed on TV by people who purportedly played the game. And by purportedly, they literally did play the game at a professional level,
Yeah.
purportedly understand what's going on. And look, not to jump away from soccer or football too much, but in the UFC recently, a champion lost his belt by illegally kneeing a grounded opponent in the head.
Peter
And it
Yan,
happened
yeah.
because he didn't understand the rule. He thought that once your hands come off the ground, you're no longer grounded, even if your knees are on the ground. Sometimes people that do these things at the highest level can get away with not understanding exactly what the rule book says because it doesn't actually affect them for their purposes, right? If you generally know how to clear the ball and how to make the right kind of tackle, you don't need to know exactly what the rules provide for referees. And I think that it's great that these people are pundits sometimes. Sometimes it's not so great in any way if they're Graham Souness or someone like that. But can someone, I mean, you'd think Dermot Corrigan, or I think is the guy's name, the ref, head of the former head ref they have on. And it seems like they just do a terrible job communicating exactly what's going on. And a lot of these players say things like, oh, you know, for me, that's never a red card. And as you point out, they don't actually say, because the rules say this, this, and this. And if you're a ref, you're allowed to give a red card for this, but not for this. And in my
it's
opinion,
all on sentiment.
They just say it doesn't feel like a red.
Yeah.
Well, I'm sorry. The rules of soccer don't say whatever fucking
feels like
Jamie
an offside.
Carragher feels like is what the card is, right? So I just think it's kind of frustrating and ridiculous that you've got these professional analysts in air quotes and stuff that just throw around these accusations about what the refs are doing right and wrong without really considering what they're even allowed to do under the governing rules of the game. It's just crazy to me that this shit keeps happening and no one ever throws up. Actually, have you read the fucking rules once in a while?
Yeah. No, that's very true. That is very true. I mean, look, this obviously there was the point of controversy in this game. All in all, like you guys, it was exactly the kind of performance that you guys needed to really solidify your chances in getting Champions League, and you guys did it extremely well. And even given the season that West Ham is having, that was a really good result. They're an extremely tough team to play.
Yep, and given Liverpool drawing this week as well,
Mhm.
Leicester just won today, sort of to maintain their lead atop Chelsea in third place. Manchester United also drawing as well this week. So, I mean, it helps Chelsea in terms of the distance between fifth and sixth. Chelsea still have Man City to play, which, we already talked about. I previously would have written up as a loss. Now I actually believe we can get maybe even all 3 points out of that game, given our performance in the FA Cup, the most important and venerable competition in all of the world. And then the other thing is we play Leicester as well. So if Leicester can drop one more result other than one to us, assuming we're able to win that one, Chelsea will actually be able to pull into third place, which would be great.
Yeah, I look Leicester, and you guys are also coming up against Leicester in the final of the FA Cup, so we'll see how that develops. I know that Leicester have, well, under Brendan Rodgers, there's a bit of a pattern, I guess, with his management style, that they fade at the end of the season, given the way that they play. So it could be a very interesting place. You guys could be looking at sneaking into that third spot, assuming this pattern continues. And of course, you have the game against Leicester in the FA Cup final to really to put that to bed. So not that would affect the league, but for rival purposes.
Yeah, and then if you can win the Champions League and the Premier and the FA Cup, you can bust out the Didier Drogba bra for 2 cups,
Yeah, that's true.
For those who are unaware, Didier Drogba, after winning the league and cup double under Ancelotti, wore a bra around the parade to represent the 2 cups there.
Oh, Didier.
Okay, so turning to Arsenal, Arsenal fall 1-0 to Everton, in what was largely an unremarkable game.
Yeah.
But there was one goal. George, what happened on that one goal?
Boof. So, I mean, first of all, to start off saying, for the vast majority of the game up until the goal, we were quite dominant. I found that we controlled the play. We had a lot more of possession, especially around Everton box. I thought we did not look that bad, but much was our problem in this game, as many of our games this season when we've played decently well, is that we're not lethal enough in front of goal. Now, having Eddie Nketiah starting for us in striker didn't help. As mentioned before, I am not particularly convinced by Eddie Nketiah. I would say you feel the same. And it really did feel like our attack did not have the same impetus as when we have, say, like a Lacazette there, a more combative forward, or even a Aubameyang, as much as he's gone invisible this season. So with the goal, essentially what had happened is that Richarlison finds a little bit of a space so that he can attack Xhaka. Xhaka actually does a good job of retreating to the right position, to be in a position where he could feasibly stop Richarlison. Where he then made a bad decision was the way that he slid in for the tackle. And look, given the situation that we're in,
bounce too.
Yeah.
You don't want to be in a foot race with Richarlison if you're Xhaka, and you should have attacked the ball in the air. Is just my thought on it. But.
Yeah, so there is that, but I think what Xhaka was going through his mind is he was kind of overcompensating for the fact that he didn't want to be in a foot race with him. So instead of making the choice to attack the ball, then he made the choice to retreat, to have a bit more. This is also so weird because it's such a juxtaposition, these two actions, but he retreated to be more conservative, and so that he wouldn't be able to be done by pace, so that he would have the goal line to be a guard against his shortcomings in pace, which I can understand that
until
he goes in and goes to ground very rashly and completely misses the ball. Richarlison goes around him. And even then he's kind of pinned at the goal line. So in my mind, he either has to like complete a good pullback or he nicks it off a defender for a corner, right? He shoots the ball at Leno, and I say, oh, thank God, Richarlison it up again, because I think Richarlison is probably like an even more inconsistent shooting Vinicius. Sometimes he's firing great, and sometimes you just say, where the hell did this guy get into a Premier League team? But Bert Leno makes an absolute meal of it. He plants his foot wrong, goes up to scoop the ball, and ends up hitting his planted leg as he's kneeling and goes through his legs and into the back of the net. Really, really bad mistake by Leno. Really, really bad mistake. And to be fair, that is a few games in a row now that he hasn't really been good. I know I feel differently about this than you, but in general, he has been extremely good and consistent for us. And he's just come into like a bit of a patch of bad form, in my opinion. But
yeah, I mean, just to make one thing clear, I'll say on that. The shot from Richarlison, whether it was a shot or a cross or a pass, it wasn't on target. It was credited as an own goal for Leno. It was actually sort of going away from goal, and he was right at the byline and was sort of almost. I'm not convinced he wasn't trying to cut it back and just screwed up his cutback somehow as well. It's kind of unclear what his intent was to me, to be perfectly honest. But in any event, it got redirected off Bernd Leno's plant leg, as you say, and into the goal after it was not on target. So
I mean, Richarlison maybe put it in the only area where it could be ambiguous whether that was a shot or a cutback, because that is the nature of Richarlison. So either way,
well, that's the point. It was not a good placement of the ball in any event. No matter what your outcome was, that was just, he fed the ball away from the goal straight at Leno.
Yeah, exactly. And I was convinced. I was really happy. I was like, oh, good. He absolutely screwed up that shot or cutback or whatever you want to call it. And then the Leno spilled it, goes off his plant foot and in. So that really took the air out of us, because after playing fairly well, obviously with the caveat that we did not have the same finishing impetus, and better finishing, I think, would have had us up 1-0 maybe a bit earlier on. After the goal, though, which is when it got like very frustrating and kind of turned like an overall, well, it's never a good performance in quotations when you lose a game in that manner, but I mean, what positivity I was seeing through the game definitely disappeared after the goal was let in. I felt it really, really deflated us. There was a lot of passing backwards and sideways, and it really just seemed like we were shook by that goal going in, because it was so against the run of play. But I don't necessarily think that was an instruction. I mean, when Arteta made very attacking changes, he brought on Martinelli to go up top and replace Nketiah. He took off Hector Bellerin and put on Willian, which, even with Willian not playing well this season, I think that can be characterized as an attacking substitution. He did take off Pepe, though, which I didn't necessarily understand why that was the case. He was our most dangerous player. It might have something to do with the fact that he took a pretty nasty challenge by, I believe it was Godfrey, who debatably should have seen red for that challenge as well. But look, that would not be the reason why we lost the game. We had a penalty disallowed because Pepe's elbow was a few millimeters offside. And at the other end, there was another offside that basically was given as, I believe it was Richarlison was given as he was onside, when it looked like there was the same sort of margin there with Pepe's. It is just kind of calls back to this discussion that we had about the precision of this tool and how it's being used and how it's affecting the game. But I mean, look,
last week we talked about how this was last week. I said that's the most BS offside that is actually an offside.
Mm-hmm.
I think this goes into the category of ones that I'm not even sure it is an offside under the rules, to be perfectly honest. The
Mm-hmm.
portion of Pepe's arm that was offside, are you actually telling me you're allowed to score with that part of your arm? Is that what VAR is trying to tell me? So if
Yeah.
Pepe then at the end of that attack, let's say it's onside all of a sudden, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
he's a centimeter further back, he's onside. And at the end of that attack, he plays the ball wide to Bellerin. Bellerin crosses it in and he hits it with that exact part of his arm into the net. No fucking way that goal gets allowed. Don't you
Yeah.
think?
Yeah. You know what? I totally agree with you on that. And
Like that's not an offside. If that's an offside, we should be seeing players aiming to hit the ball just above their elbow to score. That's
yeah,
clearly ridiculous.
yeah. No, it's absolutely true. And it was very frustrating. Look, that that's not the reason why we lost the game. Obviously, we lost because of bad thing. I think that a fair result would have been at least a tie. Um, I think that we asked most of the questions in that game. I think a tie would have been a fair result, and it just is very. It's not a good result, especially following this dissolution of the Super League. The spotlight is already on us. Uh, and look, as fallout from that, there were mass protests, massive protests in front of the Emirates, all with the lead up to the game and during the game, basically, where there were fans completely blockading the outside of the stadium. And actually, the Arsenal team arrived many hours before the game actually started to kind of avoid a Chelsea delaying the bus kind of situation. And they were all demanding Kroenke out. And I'm really happy that even after the Super League was happening, this was sort of the straw that broke the camel's back in many people's minds as to the ownership of Arsenal. And is this someone that we can tolerate being at our club anymore? Um, they showed their hand in that. And I think that between this happening, this protest, fireworks and chants were being heard all throughout the game. Um, between that and the Super League fallout and just the refereeing things that went wrong in this game, uh, to, like it sucks. I'm annoyed, and especially with the last part of the game where we didn't really push forward after Arsenal or after Everton scored. It was a frustrating result, but look, at the end of the day, all our eggs have been in the Europa League basket for quite a while now, and this it doesn't surprise me necessarily that we lost in that manner. But you know, I'm not too bothered. As I said to you a few pods ago, I think that next year, if we start and then it's like this year, then we need to ask questions about the manager and probably look at changing him. I think that for someone who this is his first full year in management, he's had to deal with a lot of things that in under any other circumstances you will never be dealing with at all in football. A mass pandemic, no fans in the stadium, a failed European Super League that he was not informed about. Obviously, other managers had to deal with this too. This is his first year. He's juggling, trying to establish a good partnership with the owners, to have a good partnership with the players. We've had lots of injuries. There's been all this VAR controversy. It's a lot for him to take in his first year. And, you know, there's some people that'll look at it and say, well, fucking tough titties. That's coaching in the Premier League. But I think that most of this is I'm fine with this happening right now. The league's been gone for quite a while. Am I pleased with this season? By no means. But look, we have an opportunity to rescue it. And I think we have a really promising manager. So that's my long-winded take on this game and its
Well,
implications.
that answers the mandatory Arteta in/out question that has to be asked after every Arsenal loss at this stage of the season.
Oh my god, I know, man. It's like every single time I look on the subreddit, I look at Arsenal content on YouTube. It's always like this after every loss. It's like it seems like an absolute crisis. And I guess my point is like At this point, we understand that this league season, is not good. Like, why is there a renewed crisis every time that we lose now?
Mhm.
I understand you play for the pride and everything like that, but I mean, there needs to be some perspective here. And I believe that we have an extremely promising manager. He's shown himself to be a very good coach. There are weaknesses in his game. This is his first full year of coaching, and I just think that we've made that decision. We should see it out for at least the reasonable amount of time. And for me, that would be 2.5 years.
Yeah, I mean, do you hear, by the way, what Georginio had to say about Lampard this week?
I did see that, yes, and he did have a point.
So for those who have not seen it, Georginio came out and said, Lampard, great guy and everything, but to a large degree, he skipped stages in his tactical and managerial education because he was a club legend, and that was evident when he was coaching the team.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that's coming in the context of Thomas Tuchel coming in and with essentially the exact same players, totally fixing the team's defense basically with a snap of his fingers, and
Mm-hmm.
turning Chelsea from sort of an inconsistent failure of a flop of a team this season into a lock. I mean, I won't say lock for top four, but into a serious success, especially looking at their Champions League campaign and FA Cup and Premier
Mm-hmm.
League campaign taken together. But I don't. At the moment, it seems like the things players are saying about Arteta do not correspond with that kind of statement Jorginho's making about Lampard.
Mm-hmm.
There have been players like Odegaard who've come out and talked about how great Arteta is and how promising and how smart a manager he is.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I do remember at Chelsea there were sort of talks of, you'd hear quotes like Kai Havertz came to Chelsea after Lampard explained what his vision for him, something like that. And then it turned
Mm-hmm.
out as soon as he's gone, everyone has bad things to say about him. So it's tough to say, but the reason I bring this up is I think there's a clear difference between judging Lampard's performance and judging Arteta's performance, which is Lampard has an undeniably better squad available to him than Arteta does.
Yep.
And I think while Arsenal fans are very frustrated with this season, I think it is true that Arsenal probably, you guys are in 9th. Am I correct about that now?
I believe we're in 10th. We're behind Leeds now.
That's a good point. So,
And
look,
also Villa has 2 games in hand and are only like 1 or 2 points behind us.
Well, look, that's pretty miserable.
Yeah, it's pretty shit. It's pretty shit. But
yeah, they have 1 point at hand, 1 game at hand, and they're 1 point behind. But look, should Arsenal be ahead of Aston Villa, Leeds in the table? And really, West Ham,
Everton,
arguably.
yeah.
But look, the point I'm making, I guess, is just I don't think Arsenal, you'd expect them to finish higher than 6th, given the strength of their squad in any event, on paper, sort of.
I would agree.
And I think there is a little bit of just the frustration of Arsenal fans of maybe the stage the club is at right now, which is being reflected on Arteta. And I don't entirely know what Arteta is supposed to do to solve some of these problems. So I would characterize, and I think you'd probably agree with this, David, that a lot of Arsenal's best and or most important players are very young.
Yeah.
Bukayo Saka, Gabriel, Tierney, and there's a lot of inconsistency and or Martinelli, although he hasn't been getting the game time arguably he deserves.
Yeah.
It's a rare team that is able to critically rely on players that young to the degree Arsenal does and have consistent success. But the issue with Arsenal seems to be that the senior level players, while they're fine Premier League players, are not players that stack up to the level of player you find in most of the squads in the top 4.
The only exception to that I would argue is an inform Aubameyang.
Right. I mean,
Yeah,
Aubameyang has malaria right now, so maybe
yeah.
in the context of this game. And look, Lacazette is a very good player. I'm not trying to say Lacazette is a bad player,
Mm-hmm.
but I equally don't. I don't know that any of the top 5, 6 Premier League teams right now would want to be starting him as their striker either.
So, well, you could argue Manchester United, but I personally think Cavani is more effective,
Or Martial for that matter.
or Martial. Um,
He wouldn't.
Leicester, I would Leicester. That's a
Vardy.
tough one. Yeah, Vardy's there. He's their guy.
I
You
guess
could
my point
argue
is
West
just
Ham, but
if he became available for 40 million, I don't think you'd have any Premier League top clubs trying to sign him for that price.
I agree with you. I think that it's because that look, his contract is also he's getting to the point where he would be 1 year till the end of his contract next year. And I think Arsenal might try and move him on. Although I do think it depends quite a bit on where we finish. Me personally, well, look, a bit of good news for Arsenal is we managed to sign Florian Balogun to a long-term contract, and he was apparently going to be leaving on a free, which I'm really, really excited about because I genuinely think that this guy is legit. This is a much more lethal player than Eddie Nketiah, a much more complete player. I think he's going to end up playing third string. So in those cup games that Eddie Nketiah would have been starting this year, I think Florian Balogun's going to take that. He's also going to start a few Premier League games, I believe. And I think we'll have like Aubameyang and Martinelli more so taking the spots in that top striker slot.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's good going forward. I guess what I was initially going to say about Arteta is just I don't think, unlike Lampard, it's fair to say that by getting a better manager, better in air quotes,
Mm-hmm.
Arsenal would just be able to turn around their team and the way Thomas Tuchel was able to turn around Chelsea. I don't think that would happen with this current squad.
I do agree with you on that. Look, if you bring in like a bona fide good manager, like say if we would have gone for Carlo Ancelotti, I think he would have been able to get more out of it, but that's natural. The guy has won 3 Champions Leagues with 3 different teams, right?
Right, but my point is maybe you'd be in the 7th instead of 11th, let's say.
Oh yeah,
which
and I
is
agree.
is that some kind of moral victory? I guess so. But the
Yeah.
point is, what really changes from an Arsenal perspective from that,
Mm-hmm.
other than a summer's worth of pride? Whereas,
And look, like one thing that I also think is a slightly important difference for this purpose of this argument, because naturally those comparisons are going to go at Arteta because new manager, but very crucially, Arteta is not necessarily a club legend. He's well liked within the club. He's not necessarily a club legend. He was not there during the
Everton
golden
legend, to be
period.
honest.
Yeah, that is another argument. But I mean, he's not necessarily a club legend. If we wanted to go that route, we had options available to us to go that route. We could have gone with Patrick Vieira, right? And who also had more experience as well. And he would have really been a really good. And we even interviewed Vieira for that position. And Arsenal fans would have absolutely loved that. Absolutely. In a way, though, I think that the Arsenal board didn't make that call to hire Vieira because they didn't want to. They almost, I feel like they almost see him as like an ace in the hole. You know what I mean? And they didn't want to put him with this team that they currently had. They went in a very bold direction. They went with Arteta. I like the appointment. Like I said, I like Arteta, but like I said, I think it's slightly different than the Lampard situation.
Now, as much as I just defended Arteta along with you there, The one thing I will say I've brought up before, and I to tie this back to Bernd Leno as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do have a few questions about Arteta's talent evaluation process.
Mm-hmm.
So a few examples before I get to Leno. Um, Martinelli, for example, I think we both feel should probably be starting more, especially ahead of Nketiah at striker and things like
Yeah.
that. Previously, Arteta seemed to be giving significant chances to Joe Willock before sending him out to become a lone legend at Newcastle.
Oh my
Um,
God. Yeah.
um, and it just to me seems like sometimes Arteta makes choices that a lot of people outright disagree with and don't end up. I mean, you can do that as a manager if you end up being right, but if you're consistently
Mm-hmm.
not right, it's a bit of a problem. And the reason I said to bring up Bernd Leno, when you said you feel like Bernd Leno's been better than I have and I've been tougher on him, I think one of the reasons why I've been as negative on Bernd Leno is in the context of how good Emi Martinez has been this season,
Yeah.
who I think has probably been a top 3 or 4 keeper in the Premier League, at least statistically speaking, in
I
the
think
Premier
he's
League this year.
second in the Prem, or maybe even tied for first in clean sheets.
Something, yeah, that's what I mean. If you take all sort of keeper metrics together,
Mm-hmm.
I think you could make the case he's a top 3 or 4 keeper in the Premier League.
So look, I loved Emi Martinez. I think it's a great story that he won an FA Cup with us, and that he managed to win that FA Cup after being our like reserve keeper, backup keeper for such a long time. Um, Look, when you have a guy that you grew in your academy, he's 28 years old. He finally gets a stint in the first team, and he for let's be honest here, maybe not even half a season. It was more so like a third, maybe even a quarter of a season. He wins a cup and he demands outright that he wants to be the number one goalkeeper. I don't think you can guarantee a guy like that. You can't just. I don't think you can do that. You can definitely say you will be able to get like half the games that Arsenal will play this year. I think you can tell him that. But he didn't want that. He wanted to be the number one guy. And you get 20 million for a guy that has been your reserve keeper when there wasn't that same interest nor immediate offer for Bernd Leno. I think it's a no-brainer that you sell, especially for a team like Arsenal where we need those funds.
I get everything you say, and when you put it like that, that's all reasonable, right?
Mm,
It's just yes, and when you say a team like Arsenal that needs those funds, I mean that's a separate discussion about Kroenke, which we'll
mm,
come to in a second.
yeah.
Um, but I just think again that's sort of what separates some of the teams that are making year in year out runs from the title with where Arsenal is currently at. Is I don't think Chelsea would make a decision to take one keeper over another based on anything other than the primary evaluation of who is the best keeper here.
Mm-hmm.
Whether or not, I mean, obviously, I think that's not to say I don't think Arsenal did that at all.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, if they at that point felt Emi Martinez was like a world-class keeper and Bernd Leno wasn't, I believe they would have kept him. But I think
Yeah.
it's sort of this confluence of factors where and again, I don't know that this is only Arteta's decision either. I do think there's been a bit of a recurring theme in this team of some of the players I identify as being the most promising. Saliba, another one, right?
Yeah.
Gwen Guendouzi, who, look, I know there's a story behind that. I know there are issues, and I know recently he's been pretty bad at Hertha Berlin after a decent start.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Following the same
I,
pattern at Arsenal, to be fair, but I mean,
I get all of that. It just seems to me like those were the players that had the highest ceilings
mm-hmm.
and the best potential to also step in and make a difference right now of your younger players.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been weird guys getting opportunities ahead of them. Willock in the past, Nketiah, who they
Yeah.
persist with ahead of Martinelli.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the fact that Saliba wasn't even in the squad, stuff like that, right? And I don't know. I don't know what to say about it.
So as an interest specifically about the Eddie Nketiah selection, I kind of have. So what I wanted to see from that game is him starting Balogun, because I think he had just signed his new contract. Well, sorry, it only came out today that he was signing his new contract, but let's face it, they knew that he was signing that contract. I
Right. It
think that
didn't happen. It didn't come out of nowhere today.
exactly. So I think that would have been a good opportunity to kind of like be like a show of faith, because of the reasoning that, which is the same reasoning why he selected Nketiah, in my opinion, is that the league at this point is
It's moot.
it's moot, and if anything, it's a barometer of how we're going to play in our games that really matter from the season on, and that's Europa League. Arteta has spoken very, very highly about Eddie Nketiah's character, and he said that it's his fault if he can't get Eddie Nketiah games. And realistically speaking, Eddie Nketiah is also coming up with 1 year left on his contract after this season. And by all accounts and by all of my expectations, we're gonna sell him. So in my opinion, I understand why, for all the off-field reasons, that he started Eddie Nketiah. And look, on the field, it was clear to my eye, and in my opinion at least, that he is not the kind of striker that we need, or nor that Arteta needs or wants. That's not a knock against Nketiah. He's a poacher. We just simply do not play with a poacher. So I see why he did it for those reasons. But I just would have liked to see that show of faith being put in a guy that has a real chance at being part of this future.
Especially when, look, it's not like Eddie Nketiah is Aubameyang or something, right?
Yeah, no, exactly.
It's not like you're taking a lethal weapon out of the lineup to be able to play him.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, for Martinelli, for just briefly to touch on Martinelli, I think that he's going to end up playing him he's going to start him at striker against Villarreal, because Lacazette, he picked up that hamstring injury. So if Lacazette is going to potentially play, he's going to probably bring him on near the end. He's not going to let him start the game. He's going to probably put Martinelli up there. I cannot see him put Eddie Nketiah up front for that game. But if he does, then like that is going to be a huge question mark for me over Arteta. That would be very frustrating, in my opinion. But
well, turning to Europe now, where there are 4 games coming up this week, 2 in the Champions League, 2 in the Europa League. Let's start with the Champions League. And obviously, if we're starting with the Champions League, we're going to start with Chelsea, Real Madrid.
Yes.
Now, as a quick preview, it seems like Rafael Varane will be back for this one, and it seems like Danny Carvajal will be back for this one as well. But Fede Valverde is out with coronavirus. Sergio Ramos is still out, and Lucas Vazquez is out. But as of today, Ferland Mendy is not in training and is not expected to play in the first leg either.
Well, that's a very, very good sign for you guys. I mean, we've been waxing lyrical about Ferland Mendy on this pod. So those are some big blows, and especially you don't know how coronavirus has affected Varane, or has affected Varane, whether he's going to have lingering effects that could impact his fitness and ability to get back to top fitness, even more so than having 14 days off would do. That is good news in a way for you guys. Obviously, you never wish injury on players or whatever, but given the situation that they're in, I think you guys can look at this game and kind of be licking your lips a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, look, ultimately, I do have this gut feeling that somehow Real Madrid in Europe under Zidane, I don't know. It's never a comfortable position to be in as the opposition. But that being said, the idea of a Pulisic or a Ziyech or a Werner or really a Hudson Odoi, or pretty much any one of our wide attackers,
Mm-hmm.
attacking a creaking, broken down Marcelo at left back. Whew, that is
Yeah.
a tasty proposition.
Yeah. No, that is true. That is true. And look, Real Madrid, whatever you want to say about the team, it definitely isn't in the best shape that it has been over Zidane's tenure, interrupted tenure, but tenure nonetheless. It's probably the weakest team that he's had. He's still in with a shot of maybe getting La Liga title. He's in a Champions League semifinal. And if there's any manager that has success and quick success in Champions League, where their teams happen to heat up at the right point of the season, it's Zidane. So I'll be very interested to see what happens in this game, and I think Tuchel will be a very, very good match for trying to neutralize this Madrid team in the state that it's in.
Now, a couple other notes. As much as I would like to see Marcelo destroyed, there is a chance, obviously, that they play Nacho down the left.
Mm-hmm.
Again, would that be as fun as watching the artist formerly known as Marcelo try to defend a Callum Hudson-Odoi, Christian Pulisic two-man attack? No, that would not be nearly as fun.
Yeah.
But in any event, I would much rather have him on the left wing than Ferland Mendy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, 100%.
One other note. There is a possibility that Eden Hazard could play in this game.
That would be a very, very interesting proposition. Now, obviously, he hasn't been very effective for Real Madrid since he's been back, mostly because he's been sidelined with injuries. And who knows if he comes back, maybe he gets injured again. So
I don't expect him to play.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like he has been taken off of their official injury listing.
Mm-hmm.
Although that doesn't mean he's sort of been back in training in any capacity.
Yeah.
I'm trying to find, is this one going to be played in Spain? I think it is. If Liverpool played at what's it called?
Alfredo Di Stefano.
Yeah. Then I assume we will be playing there as well, but I don't actually see.
Yes, it'll be at Estadio Alfredo Di Stefano.
Okay. Yep. Well, in any event, it should be a little boost that there's no Mendy. That being said, this is going to still be a very tough fixture.
Yeah.
If Azpilicueta starts at right back, I think that might be the case as well. I think Tuchel might basically want three center backs to be able to follow Benzema without having to be dragged out of position wherever he goes along the back line, especially when two of those center backs are fairly mobile, and Christensen and Rudiger.
Mm-hmm.
And Thiago Silva also not exactly a creaking board, even though he's not as athletic as he was when he was younger, obviously. I don't know. I mean, do you have a prediction for how this first leg will go?
So I think that Chelsea will score. I think it might end in like a 1-1, or I think 1-1 would. I expect it to be a 1-1. That's my call for the score.
I know I predicted Chelsea to go through when we did our predictions back a few episodes ago, before the quarterfinals. My confidence is lower now than it was then, as this Real Madrid team seems to have sort of hit their stride recently. I think this might be a 0-0, which would be a dangerous scoreline for Chelsea. Not a disastrous one, but a dangerous one.
Yeah. I either way, I really do feel like this one could be a draw. Either that or Chelsea might win like 1-0, but I don't see it as a high scoring game.
I can't see either side scoring two or more, or more than two.
Yeah.
I'll say. I mean, look, we've been flagrantly wrong about these things many times before. See
Yes.
Dortmund City.
Yes.
But I think neither of these teams will feast on the other, as I think they're both much better at keeping the opposition out than they are at burying their own chances. And especially, I mean, with Madrid, I think if you can sort of stop Benzema, not just stop him from scoring, but stop him from sort of being a distribution hub in the front line as well. You really can slow down Madrid's attack, if not sort of cut it off entirely. So between Conte and our three center backs, I think we'll be able to do that, but I think it might come at the cost of offense on our end as well.
I would agree.
The other semifinal, PSG against City. Obviously, I had predicted Bayern to go through. I believe you did as well.
Yes, I did, but now obviously
I
that's
had
not the case.
Bayern
But
beating City. They are now out. You had City beating Bayern. Do you still feel like City is going to go through to the final?
so this one's I find this one actually a little bit tougher because Mauricio Pochettino has shown that he really knows how to counter Guardiola teams, albeit sometimes those were in very controversial VAR fashion. See the semifinals of the Champions League where Liverpool had beaten Tottenham in the final. And even in the league, Pochettino has shown that he has a very good understanding of how to counter Barcelona. Now, would that be as effective with a group of players that he hasn't had a ton of time with? And also the fact that he doesn't speak French, we'll see about that. I mean, realistically, he kind of just needs to speak Spanish with a lot of their star players. Also, whether those players have the discipline to be able to do that, whether they have the energy to be able to do that in that way. This is a really tough one for me because I don't think that City have ever had to defend against anybody as skillful as Neymar or anybody as fast as Mbappe. I don't think necessarily that they're going to be able to maintain possession as well in this game as they would be against Bayern. This is a really tough one for me, man, because I just think Bayern's more of a playable team for City than PSG is. I'm going to say this one. I think this might be a higher scoring tie. I could see this opening game ending maybe 2-1 in favor of City, or to be honest, 2-2, 2-1 or 2-2, I think. It's at the Parc des Princes. I just think that City's going to be able to get those two away goals at least, but we'll see.
This is a really tough one to call. I agree with you on that. And the reason why is because I think the tie will either be very comfortable for Manchester City the whole way through, or will be very comfortable, except they don't actually score any goals, and then Neymar and Mbappe score a couple here or there to put PSG through. I think there's basically two ways this tie, both of the matches together will go, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I can't see a world in which PSG control the game.
No, I don't think so. I think they'll have a little bit more of a foothold in it, especially if Verratti is fully fit and he's at his best. They'll have a bit more of a chance of controlling, but I also don't necessarily think that that's what they want to do.
Right. I do think they are a little overmatched when it comes to both defenders who are able to play the ball, and with all due respect to Marquinhos, who's very good as a ball-playing defender, and they're just completely overrun in midfield, in my opinion, as well.
I just really worry for them on the flanks, especially guarding against City's wide players, and if last ties were anything to go by,
with Colin Dagba,
and Diallo, I cannot see a world where Diallo's going to be getting the best of Riyad Mahrez consistently
with Cancelo behind him as
well as on the other side how Dagba is going to be dealing with Phil Foden. I just see that as a really dangerous proposition. But look, in recent games we've seen that City has had the brunt of possession lots of times, and just hasn't been able to put away those chances.
Well, that's just it. To me, it's just, will City score about 4 goals over the course of the 2 matches? And remain comfortable conceding maybe one over the course of the two? Or will they play exactly the same way as they did in that first situation, but fail to convert any of their chances and just be hit on a couple counters by Mbappe and Neymar doing, Mbappe and Neymar things?
Yeah, yeah. It's a
And
real tough one, but I do think City are going to eke this out.
I mean, look, I have to agree with you, given my description was City will be the better team the whole time and they'll either win because of it or just fail to convert their chances.
Mm-hmm.
But just like I have a bit of a feeling that Real Madrid might be able to pull this one out and I mean go all the way this year, this does feel like maybe a situation where PSG just sort of shows City that having the two best and most decisive players arguably on the planet or arguably on the planet outside of Messi right now is a good
Mm.
thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, I don't know. I have a weird feeling that this might be one of these Pep collapses in the Champions League, despite his team playing better most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I'm gonna say City,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm very non-committal on this one.
Yeah, yeah. On the score line. Yeah. I can see that. This is a tough one to call, and it's probably been one of the tough. Look, I have obviously been wrong in doing predictions like this, even when I'm doing it amongst friends, like in past years. This one is probably the one where I've had the most hesitation over in terms of knockout two-legged ties.
Um, well, let's turn to another European fixture where
Mm.
Arsenal take on the ghost of Arsenal past, the master of the Europa League himself, Unai Emery and Villarreal.
Look,
Um,
this.
I will not pretend to know a lot about this Villarreal team. I knew
Mm,
a lot about Villarreal maybe 4 or 5 years ago, but
yeah.
I do not know much about this team. What are your expectations for this tie?
So Villarreal were helped out a lot this year because Valencia basically gave them like three players for free, one of which being Valencia's captain, Danny Parejo. Um, they also received Francis Coquelin, who is now an old Arsenal player playing for Villarreal. Of course, Santi Cazorla was there before he moved to play for Xavi's team in Qatar. Um, they have Paco Alcacer that starts up top usually for them, formerly of Dortmund and Barcelona fame, where he had an excellent season, about half season with Dortmund, and was always second fiddle to Luis Suarez at Barcelona. Uh, they also have Gerard Moreno, who's been playing quite good for them, as well as Carlos Baca coming off the bench. Um,
Speaking of Arsenal past, Francis Coquelin seems to be on their squad as well.
yes, yes. He is going to be coming back to face us. But they basically recruited a bunch of players from Valencia because their owner was giving players away for free. So you're going to build a decent team that way. They also have a very dangerous winger by the name of Samuel Chukwueze, who Arsenal was very nearly signed, but did not have, basically with the English work permit rules, he was unable to get a work permit, so he ended up not signing for us. But we almost signed him, and he's been having an excellent, excellent, excellent season with Villarreal. They are a good team. They're not necessarily blessed with pace, although Chukwueze is a pacey player. And very much they are they resemble a lot of the kind of principles that Emery was trying to put in place at Arsenal, which is more so becoming a team that counters other teams rather than focuses on making a distinct playing style. They've had two very, very difficult games in a row in the lead up to this. They had lost their first one, and then their second one, which they played against Barcelona, they lost 2-1. They have 2 days less rest than we did leading up to this game. Look, as much as Unai Emery gets a lot of shit, I just think he was kind of like in a he wasn't able to communicate well with our players, and it just didn't lend itself to him being taken seriously. And I do feel bad for him. I actually wanted Unai Emery. Of the candidates available, I wanted Unai Emery. But it was very clear that he had lost the dressing room at some point and he had to go. Now, would this be the absolutely rotting cherry on the cake of shit that has been Arsenal's season this year, that we get kicked out to our former manager who couldn't pronounce V's? Yeah, that would fucking suck. But I want to say this game is going to end in a tie, because it seems like under Arteta in all of our two-legged games, the first leg always ends in a tie. But I genuinely think that this is going to be like a 1-1 or a 2-1, depending. We might eke it out at 2-1. I know that the team's going to be up for this, but I really am feeling a tie from this game.
So I've got a couple questions for you on this one before we move on.
Yep.
Does Nketiah start up front in this one?
In my mind, no. In my mind, he should not. It should be Martinelli that starts up top. Pepe should be starting on the left, Saka on the right. We'll see where Odegaard is along in his development or getting back from his injury. If it's not going to be Odegaard, it's probably going to be Smith Rowe. In the midfield, I would like to see Xhaka and Thomas Partey. Left back, I would like to see Cedric come in. Left center back, well, Holding is going to be starting at right back, that's for sure. I think Gabriel will start, but I kind of want to see Mari play, because Mari has been very good at developing a partnership with Holding. And at right back, I expect to see Hector Bellerin with Leno in net.
My next question for you is going to be, are you concerned, given your bad form in the league, that is not so much you guys saving up your energy for the Europa League, but it's going to translate to the Europa League?
I would not be a seasoned Arsenal fan if I wasn't half scared at that prospect. Yes, I am. And to be honest, I feel that we're not gonna, if the game that we will play the best in will be the second leg. I can almost guarantee it. Yes, I am very scared of that happening. Yes, Milton.
And last one, over under on chair smashed on Arsenal live streams this time around.
Oh God. I'm gonna oh my God. I'm gonna say half a chair. I'm gonna think that like someone sits on it wrong or something, probably Ty, after like getting up and like celebrating a goal that will inevitably be called back for an elbow offside, and he'll sit wrong on the chair and fall over. That's my call for this one.
All right, well, that was going to be my last one, was over under on VAR calls fucking Arsenal over. But
oh yeah, that's going to be one. That's going to be one.
On the other side of the bracket, Man U take on Roma. Who do you expect to see coming out of this one?
So this is kind of tough, because I do think that Manchester United have struggled against teams like Roma in the Premier League, or at least play kind of like Roma in the Premier League. I think I'm going to go, hold up, let me see where the game's being played. But I think it's going to end up being like a favorable result for Roma, like either a favorable draw or they'll eke out a win.
I think Man U is going to win both legs of this one, to be honest.
So this is at Old Trafford. I'm going to call a 1-1 draw in this game.
That'd be a great result for Roma.
It would be.
I hope result. That is the case, but
I also hope that is the case. But I have a feeling that they're going to lock it down. I think that
I have a feeling that Solskjaer is destined to win the Europa League, so that he can have to go back and explain that actually cups are the biggest marker of success for a team, and the Europa League is the most important marker of success. And what he said before is not true. Yeah, that's just my reasoning for why I think he's going to walk this one.
Yeah. No, that's true. I mean, I think it'll end up being that. I think that he'll play it kind of cautious, Solskjaer, which he does do in large games. Now, maybe that'll work in his favor because he doesn't consider this a large game because he doesn't think competitions are to be taken seriously. So, I mean, it remains to be seen. So,
Yeah, I've got this one as a 1-0 win for the PE teacher and his men
yeah.
at Old Trafford. Sticking with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer and his many predictions, it is time, ladies and gentlemen, for the Didier Drogba. It is a fucking disgrace of the week. And our first nominee is none other than the PE teacher himself, who prior to the 0-0 draw at Leeds, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer in an interview said, "It's not going to be 0-0. I can guarantee it's not going to be 0-0. It's two teams who want to attack and attack as quickly as they can." Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, your clairvoyance never disappoints. Thank you once again. But unfortunately, you are not this week's winner. Nor is Bernd Leno.
Are you telling me that Solskjaer didn't get this? Oh,
No, unfortunately, the
I'm
end of
sure
the
he did
world did
not see
not
that
come.
coming.
Bernd Leno is also a nominee for the Disgrace of the Week, who has been spared being a winner after the much discussed episode against Everton, throwing the ball into his own net. Because the winner this week is Tottenham Hotspur. Why, you may ask? Well, after racking up none other than 0.04 expected goals against Manchester City in the League Cup, now Carabao Cup final, Tottenham Hotspur put up for sale their commemorative merchandise for the occasion of their Carabao Cup finals appearance against Manchester City. This is the definition of a celebration of mediocrity. This is in fact, when you consider the 0.04 xg, it's as if they didn't show up at all in this game.
Yeah.
So I don't even know why this merchandise was put out. In fact, if this game had gone on for 20 times as long, they almost would have had one expected goal total.
Whereas City would have had 60.
Yeah, City had 2.5, so they would be at 50 expected goals in that same period of time. This is also after Spurs fired Jose Mourinho prior to the Cup final. Really one of the only people to be able to get a result against Pep Guardiola, a favorable result against Pep Guardiola. Someone who sort of is a specialist in getting crap results in cup matches and elimination matches gone. Ryan Mason in.
Yeah.
Baffling decision on baffling decision. Tanguy and Ndombele out of the lineup. Harry Winks into the lineup. Yeah, this one just not good.
It does not look good on Daniel Levy, especially, because as we mentioned before, Jose Mourinho is the only manager not to be fired or to be fired in the Super League. I can guarantee you that what had happened is that Daniel Levy was so convinced that he was getting that payout of the 300 some odd million windfall for joining this that he could then afford to fire Jose Mourinho. And then it all collapsed and he's left with no manager, and let alone the only manager to have beaten Pep Guardiola in a final. It does not look good. Even if you're looking at getting rid of the guy, what is the interest in throwing away your chances of winning the only silverware that you've won since the League Cup in 2008? And you're putting a 29-year-old in charge of that.
Well, I mean, look, you're overlooking how impressive an accomplishment it is just to make the final of the Carabao Cup such that it should be commemorated with multiple issuances of mugs, hats, sweatshirts, scarves.
Fridge magnet, lanyard. I'm actually thinking about picking one of those up for my Tottenham friend. Here's the funny thing is I think
they should AFTV should get one as a decoration.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But here's the thing. I just think that merchandise is going to end up be sold. Either they have like a marketing department that is like an Arsenal fan, because I guarantee you all the sales that they get from that are going to be from Arsenal fans to give to their Tottenham friends to give them that as a gift.
And keep in mind, this is not long after Spurs reprimanded one of their sponsors, a paint sponsor,
Oh my
for
God.
immediately tweeting about how hysterical their lack of trophies throughout their history is. And in the wake of talking about how disrespectful that was, they then issue a celebration for making the final of basically a tournament that, in all fairness, probably shouldn't even exist anymore. So,
Oh my God. That's
so congratulations, Spurs, in particular your marketing department. You are the fucking disgraces of the week.
oh my God.
Unless, of course, there are any fans who enthusiastically purchased this merch in an unironic manner, then the title goes to you guys.
Oh yeah, that would be hands down way worse than the club doing this.
If you're genuinely stoked to buy that lanyard,
Nothing says we enjoy being average than a lanyard that says Carabao Cup Finalist 2020-2021.
All right, George, what do you have for the banger of the week?
So for the Bergkamp banger of the week, I have to for the memes just Laporte's goal in the Carabao Cup final to seal that non-win for Tottenham. Jokingly, I have as an honorable mention. But the goal, the Bergkamp banger of the week, goes down to two plays. One of which, and shout out to this player because he played such an instrumental role in a very, very pivotal game. Burak Yilmaz playing for Lille against Lyon. Lille being down in the match and needed a win to keep their distance on Paris at the top of their table in their bid to become Ligue 1 champions. Sets up a free kick from outside the box, pretty much dead on, maybe from about 25 yards ish, 25 to 23 yards. And he absolutely bullets it into the top corner to put Lille ahead. Now, also during that game, he had an assist to set up our boy, Jonathan David, the Canadian, to put Lille level, and then even scores the winner to put them up 3-2 and to win the game so that they could keep their distance on Paris. What an important player to them. What an important goal, and what a fucking banger. So the other nominee for this week is Antoine Griezmann, who was put through with a ball against Villarreal. The ball settles for him nice in the penalty area, not necessarily a favorable angle. So he kind of switches his feet from right to left and places a beautifully dirty chip over the keeper right into the bottom corner. And I am such a great fan of chipped goals. And so for me, big respect to Burak Yilmaz and the impact that he's had this week, but I'm going to have to give goal of the week to Antoine Griezmann and that filthy, delicious chip.
Yeah, and not to understate the importance of that goal either. As important as Yilmaz's goal and involvement in general in that game was to Lille's title charge, right now Barcelona win their game in hand and they're in the driver's seat for La Liga, and in no small part thanks to that goal helping them win that game. In fact, that pulled them down from 1-0 down at the time and pulled them level. So big goal as well in that game.
And also
hard to disagree
probably
with
a
that
lot.
choice.
Yes. And also probably a lot more big part to do with that is that Atletico is absolutely shitting the fucking bed right now and making me very annoyed because I want them to win a title. And they lost 2-1 to Athletic Bilbao this weekend, and further cementing their decline in the later stage of the season. But we digress.
Yep. So, I mean, that sort of rounds out our show for this week. We will be back next week to round up those first leg matches in Europe and the Premier League fixtures that follow. Make sure to subscribe to the pod, download the pod, follow us on YouTube, and make sure to support the Kroenke Out movement. Get Spotify and get anyone in, just not Kroenke.
I want to hear all of you guys having Spotify Premium and and financing this takeover, because I, for one, would be very, very into this happening.
So that's it for this week. We'll see you guys next week.
Bye-bye now.